Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
So round 3 of the UK Angling Championships is upon us and things are getting really exciting now. We have 1 or 2 anglers breaking away at the front, and today's event comes from Weston Pools in Shropshire. Now it's a venue that not many of these anglers have fished before, but there are lots and lots of fish in here. It's going to be a very exciting day today.
Round 2 saw the halfway stage in the UK Angling Championships, and what a competition it was. Cold weather, cold winds, but hot spirits over at Decoy meant that the championship table looked incredibly impressive after round 2. Look at that, Pembrighting, 2 points, a perfect score, but with another 4 anglers on 3 and a whole host on 4, it was really tight, and round 3 would be an incredibly decisive day.
So Pem, round 3, race leader, great position to be in.
Yeah, definitely, but another 2 rounds to go yet, so a long way to go, all to play for today.
Tell me about this place, what do you know about it?
Never been to Weston, first time I've been here. It's quite a short gap from round 2 to today, so I've not got a chance to be here, but got a couple of good pals that go here a bit, so I've quizzed them and yeah, give it my best, and what will be.
Expecting some big weights today, it's going to be a bit of a fish race, isn't it?
Apparently so, yeah, lots of small fish in here. Weights have been big leading up to it, so yeah, I think we're all going to have a good day's sport today.
You got your tactics nailed?
Well, I think I have, but whether the fish think I have or not is a different situation.
There's a little pack of you at the moment, just starting to emerge at the front, just starting to break away from the rest. Who are you worried about within that pack?
You've got to go with the current Fishermania champion, Jamie Hughes, chasing, exceptional angler, well on and knows how to sort these sorts of venues out. Grant Albert is there, again knows how to catch fish. You've got Steve Rothery, superb angler, and of course Pembrighting right at the top, one angler. He'd be very hard to beat here, very hard to beat.
Big tough day, but I think by the end of today the men will well and truly be sorted out from the boys.
Well, 1 round left after today, and yeah, the good score is needed today, and need to be in the top 2. Anybody in that leading pack will need a top 2 finish today to go into that last round at Boston, because that will be the telling time. Be an interesting match today, an interesting match.
So, Jamie, wow, you've had an incredible time recently. What a result. Firstly, congratulations for Fishermania.
Thank you very much, Rob.
We come into round 3 of the UK Champs.
Yep.
You've fished here before?
Yes, it's a venue I know very well. I do a lot of my coaching on here. I've fished here hundreds of times. It's a nice local venue for a change.
So I would say that you're probably favourite on this venue for at least a section win, if not the match win.
I wouldn't go that far. I think it's going to be, with today especially, it's going to be quite peggy. You're going to want a lily bed. It's going to be very important to draw a lily bed, but there's going to be a lily bed in most sections. But other than that, it's going to be a great day's fishing. There's a lot of fish here to be caught. It's nice technical fishing. There's not going to be massive weights and low weights in the same section. It's going to be a nice even spread of 70, 80 pounds to do well with maybe 150 to win.
Bit of a fish race place this, isn't it? That suits you.
On certain lakes it can be a bit of a fish race. A lot of big fish here as well that are sort of overlooked. A lot of proper carp, 5 to 10 pound, that don't get caught much. But if they have a feed, they can be really worth targeting. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot of F1s to be caught, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, it suits you, doesn't it? Now, you're in a very nice position in the chasing pack as well. So, you know, what was it? You've had a 5th and a 1st,
I've had a 5th and a 2nd. I'm on 7 points, which I'm a bit disappointed about the last round, but there's nothing I could do about that. I felt I did as much as I could. But still in with a chance. I think Andy won with 9 points last year.
Yep.
So he was still on track for that sort of target. That's the target I definitely need to win the next 2. But you never know.
Pembrighton's a man to watch, isn't he?
Of course he is. Of course I think Pem deserved it as well. He was close a couple of years ago. He was in exactly the same position, and he he suffered a bit of a bad one, but I think this will suit Pem as well. He's good at being a nice busy angler. I think he'll be hard to beat today. He'll definitely be up there.
Jamie, you didn't look massively happy when you drew, but things aren't that bad, are they?
No, to be honest, I was having a bit of a sulk. It's definitely not a match-winning peg, but on reflection, I'm quite happy. It's a nice, steady section, very fair section. This, or the early numbers of Canal, if you like. I'm against a few pegs down the arm there, which are a bit of a worry, but I'm really happy. It's definitely a top 3 section peg if I do it right.
What's going to be your opening plan then? Big weights off this.
I've just spoke to the lad who was on here yesterday, and all he's done is fish shallow long, so how can you do anything different?
You've got a nice edge to your left-hand side if you need it, towards the back end too. Peg 12 in the middle of you and Adam Wakeling over there's not taken either, so
no.
Reasonable amount of space.
Yeah, I might chuck, if I'm struggling, I might chuck some casters shallow down here and fish up and down. There's a lot of barbel in here as well apparently, so I've never fished the lake, I've never fished the venue.
So you've got Mr Wakeling directly opposite you?
Yeah.
You're going to give him a lesson?
We'll see, hopefully. It's a fishing match. Yeah.
So, minutes before the competition starts, and joining me on the bank today is my usual wingman, Ray King. Now, Ray, we're starting on Weir, which is a really interesting pond. There's quite a lot of fish in here, and we're behind Craig Goldstraw. This is peg 10, and all eyes are in this area at the moment. It produced a massive weight yesterday, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I think a few of the guys come up and had a rover match yesterday, slightly different in the sense that the guys draw out of the hat for choice of peg rather than to be told where to go. And a couple of the locals seem to be quite keen on getting to this area, so it would lead us to believe that it's a really good area to draw for the match today, certainly.
Absolutely. Well, we've had a quick chat with him, and he's just waiting for the start now, but he looks like he's going to be fishing just down the edge to kick off. He's got a line straight out in front of him, and there's a big bay just to his left. Peg 12 isn't in. Yep. Oh, so it's every other peg that's pegged. Peg 12 isn't in. Opposite, he's got Adam Wakeling, England Feeder International.
Yeah, it's going to be tough over this end. I mean, there's going to be a good tussle between the guys. You might see both of them adopting the same tactics. Seems to be shallow, seems to be key for the day. And also, a lot of the guys have been fishing shallow down the edge, which if you can get them a little bit closer, you can certainly possibly catch them quicker.
The complex itself is relatively new. I don't know, maybe 10 years old, but coming into the circuit over the last 4 or 5 years, it's really developed a name for itself. And this is the first time that the UK Champs Tour has visited here. And as we've touched on already through the course of conversations, some of the lads have been here before, but an awful lot haven't, so they don't really know what to expect. Now, what do you do in a situation like that? Do you play to your strengths? Do you listen to the locals? Do you go with recent knowledge of what's happened over the last few days? How do you play it?
Well, I mean, firstly, it is a long way from Norfolk, I know that. So I think you have to use a little bit of your own intuition. I think you have to speak to the guys in a tackle shop, have to look at the match results. You have to maybe work things out for yourself to a certain extent, but fishing to your strengths on a strange venue is normally the way to go. Keep your eyes and ears open, see what the other anglers are doing, and if they're catching more than you are, then hey, you do what they're doing. It's as simple as that. You copy them.
Right, well, the competition is just about to start now. Let's have a look at what this man behind us is going to do. And there it is, that is the start. And it looks like he's going to start straight down the edge. He's on the deck, he's not shallow, and he's going up against that rope, which is one of the anchor ropes for the paddle that keeps the oxygen coming into this pond.
Yeah, it seems that they're obviously leaving the pumps on today, Rob, which are slightly unusual, I suppose, for a match situation. That's going to be creating a lot of undertow and current on the water, so the guys might find themselves fishing in slightly heavier floats than they normally would. Also, the margins here, we had a little look last night, didn't we, and the margins seem very, very deep, so that might be a reason why shallow fishing down the edges works so well. Straight
look at that bag, yes. That's less than a minute.
and he's into fish, and this will be interesting to see what it is now. Let's have a look at the speed and efficiency. Now, Craig spends a lot of time with Jamie Hughes. He's a very, very good angler in his own right anyway, but spending time with Jamie Hughes means that you're going to be picking up all sorts of tips. And there's a bit of bragging rights between them as well. They sit behind each other in the big competitions, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
He was on the net for Jamie the other day in Fishermania.
I'd like to think Jamie's at least bought him a breakfast, Rob, or something.
Well, 130 grand over the last 4 matches, I think he's caught. That's not too bad at all.
It's not too shabby, is it? Let's face it.
Well, there's Adam Wakeling, and he's not far off fish for fish at the moment with Craig. He's had a good start. He's fishing straight out in front of him, and he seems to be fishing on the deck as well. Yeah. So very similar tactics between the two of them, but his fish is slightly smaller. Looks like a little barbel, that one.
Yeah, Adam's just fishing straight out in front of him, where Craig was sort of favouring the margins, or certainly, closer toward the side of the bank anyway. Certainly, both guys have got off to a really good start.
Fishing a relatively short line, that's what, 5 metres, 6 metres maybe?
Yeah, top 4, top 5, something like that.
Didn't take too long at all, and there's clearly a stack of fish down there. I think this is what they call solid or black, isn't it?
Fish soup.
Smaller one this time. And,
decent F1, nearly a couple of pounds.
Yep.
Other anglers around the lake still into fish at the moment, so it seems like there's going to be a good weight on here today.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
I'm Perry Stone. I fish at the highest level in match fishing. I cannot afford to lose any fish. That is why I use Gamakatsu hooks. They're pin sharp, they don't blunt, and they are simply the best.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
Well, today a lot of the guys are going to be concentrating on doing a lot of their fishing shallow. Very simply, fishing shallow is exactly what it says it is. It's catching fish in the higher levels of the water. What we've got here is a standard shallow rig setup. We have what we call an inline style dibber float. The line runs through the middle of the dibber, thus eliminating any need for a little wire eye on the side. Basically, it gives a lot more strength and durability to a rig, which we want to be catching lots of fish on very quickly for the duration of the match. Very, very simple, this rig indeed. Just a couple of little shot below the float. They will start off below the float. I can move them up, I can move them down, I can move them apart, see what the fish want on the day. Then we go down to the hook length. We have a short 6-inch hook length below that, tied with a loop-to-loop knot. Going down, we have a size 18 hook, a strong model with a wide gape and a banded pellet. Very, very simple, very, very straightforward indeed. What we're trying to do with this method, we're trying to replicate the sound and the noise of the loose offerings of the pellets as we go down. So what we're trying to do is let the bait fall through the water at the same rate as the loose pellets that we're feeding by hand or by catapult if the guys are fishing longer. What you also might see a few of the guys doing today is not feeding so much, but trying to get the noise purely of the pellet alone to draw the fish into the peg. And then that way, what happens is when the fish come up to intercept the feed, there's no feed there, apart from just the one pellet, which is on the end of your hook. And hopefully, that's all there is to it.
So we're looking across the pool now at Jimmy Brooks, who is currently one of the guys in second place, equal second. There's 4 of them on 3 points at the moment. Pete Bailey, Steve Rothery, Nick Speed, and this man, Jimmy Brooks, he's a local to you as well.
Yeah, I know Jimmy really well. He's a good lad and a really, really good angler. I think he's had possibly more fish than Craig at the moment, but I don't think all of his put together weighs as much as one of Craig's smallest does.
Well,
but he's in now.
He's got one on there now. Let's have a look. That
very,
looks...
very good shallow. Very, very good on the pole with F1s, Jimmy. Very, very good indeed. Had some huge weights of F1s over at decoy weight, up to 300 pounds.
He's catching roach at the moment.
It was just what he's saying. Just what he was saying a moment ago. He seems to be favouring up the other end of the lake at the moment, but Jimmy will keep plugging away. He won't be beat yet. He certainly won't be beat yet.
Let's have a look. He's fishing shallow. He's down the edge shallow. And this is the tactic that a lot of people were saying was going to be the one, down the edge shallow. That's going to be the thing that will set the big weights in this competition. He's baiting up straight out in front of him as well. Let's just have a look at his bite rate. Early stages, obviously finding their feet on the day. Lots of people that haven't fished here before. It's going to be a bit of a slow start, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of an unknown quantity when you're at a new venue, isn't it? You've just got to have a little look around you, keep your eyes and your ears open, see what everybody else is doing.
He's in again there. That's a pretty quick bite.
Again, a lot of the anglers at the moment are trying to catch the fish as close to them as they can. They are not very big, Jimmy. The quicker, the closer you can get, the better with those.
Let's have a look at the man next door to him now, Grant Albert.
He's on your peg from last night, Rob.
He is. He's not doing as well as me either, but the weather is very different.
Well, but that is one way of looking at it. I don't think I would quite put it like that, but they were trying to get under that platform last night when we were playing around with the pole, weren't they?
Absolutely. It's a very nice margin down there, that overgrowth on the left-hand side of the picture as we look at it. 3.5 foot deep, nice on the deck.
There's a lot of, a lot of reeds and overhanging features, isn't there? It's very hard. What we found last night was to actually get very, very tight to the edge. I think Jimmy next door is into a slightly better fish at last. I think a few of the guys are just trying to get the head round at the moment, but they are still putting some sort of fish in the net, which is always a good start.
Well, there is a rule that affects the amount of bait that they can put in, remember, of course.
Yeah.
There's an 8-pint rule. And 8 pints, it's a 5-hour competition. It's what, pint and a half there or thereabouts per hour. So if they start too heavy now, just to get some bites, they won't have anything left to be able to feed later on.
That's an interesting tactic. You've got to certainly incorporate that into your match plan.
He's got that. That's a bigger fish.
Now. Yeah, be happy now. Again, big fish shallow down the edge. Biggest fish we've seen caught so far, I'd have said.
This is Canal behind us, and one of the big features in Canal are these groups of lily pads. Now, we don't see groups of lily pads in normal match venues very often either, do we?
I mean, I think when you draw a peg, you're looking for anything that can give you an advantage. Certainly whether you have something like, I don't know, a feeder track to an island or a nice depth of margin. With these lily pads, a lot of the fish are going to be maybe taking refuge from the hot sun under those lily pads. The guys will be trying to get right up to the edge, feed and catch shallow toward them. So if you've got a great bunch of lily pads in your swim, yeah, definitely worth giving them a go for sure.
It's interesting the amount of cover as well, because those pads will give cover, so they're a feature. The margins are very, very overgrown all the way around almost every lake here. The margins are overgrown, and we also found yesterday that they were very deep too. So the fish will push really, really tight in, and sometimes you can't get right tight up to it. You've got that cover too, so the margins are immensely productive, but also aerators. They're another little attractor for fish as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of feature. I mean, the fish believe there's a little bit more oxygen, there's a little bit more cover, there might be a little bit more ripple, a little bit more noise. You never know. You can always have a go at these things. If it don't work, then you can try something else.
Yeah, there's a fantastic feature on this lake in particular, and that is a big old railway bridge. Now, there's a lot of history in this area. It's an old railway town. And the guy that runs the place, Mike Philbin, he's got a beautiful little bridge going out onto the island there, and that again is another little hot spot too, so good bit of shade and cover. It's all to play for here at Canal. I think what we should do is find out how Mr. Jamie Hughes is doing. He's at the opposite end up there. He wasn't happy to begin with. Let's find out how he's feeling now the match has started. And here is the man that's just made himself £50,000 richer in Fishermania. This is Jamie Hughes. He is on peg 10 on Canal. And it looks like he's out on the long pole. The big question is he out for those pads or is he down the edge? And I think he's probably going to be fishing for the pads that are just out of our vision at the moment. He decided early on in the game that he was going to go in on pellet, and you can just see he's just flicking around there. Looks like he's fishing pellet shallow, doesn't it, Ray?
It does, yeah. He wasn't very happy at the draw this morning, was he? But he did have quite a good draw last weekend, which I'm sure he'll be fine about.
Mate, you know what winners are like. You've won one match and you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about winning the next one, and he will desperately want to do well in this competition.
Yeah, you're never happy.
He's not won it. He's got a chance for match this. He's got another place in Golden Reel. He said he's going to have 3 more goals at Golden Reel. He's already through to match this. He's won Fishermania, and actually, if he has a good result today, he's back in the running in the UK Champs as well. So, of the 4 biggest events in the country, he's won 1, and he's got a good chance in 2 at the moment.
He has, yep.
There he has. He's netted it. It's only a small fish, but nevertheless, Jamie Hughes is putting more money in the till. Well, the pads are really coming into play, and we spoke about them earlier, and we can see directly opposite us there. Our man is fishing directly up against the pads, fishing shallow.
Yeah, trying to catch the fish as shallow as he can, as close to the pads as he can. The only trouble with that style of fishing, Rob, is when you do hook a bigger fish, they very often make a beeline to get straight underneath those pads. There's all sort of thick roots and stuff under there. If you get a little bit tangled in there, you could soon be a goodbye to the rig and the fish as well.
So Jason Binder on peg 29 now, and he's had a reasonable time so far. We saw him catch a really big barbel not 5 minutes ago, and he's got a decent fish on now, and he's moved out. He's alternating between fishing maggots down the edge and fishing caster out in front of him, isn't he?
Yeah, Jason's just fishing about 5 metres out, feeding casters by hand. He's obviously been feeding that while he's been fishing down his edge. He's just moved onto that line now, and he's just had an eye, and he's into another decent fish now, which I'm going to guess is an F1. No, that'll be wrong.
Very, very productive way of fishing this, isn't it? It's really quick, you know, almost table tennis, ping-ponging between the two, catching a few fish out the front, keeping the bait going, feeding them up again, getting them competitive. Is that an ide or is that a little barbel? Surely he's not catching barbel shallow, that's an ide.
Another ide. And also he's not really very, I mean, he's fishing there a couple of foot deep. It's not like your conventional foot or 18 inches.
And you can soon build a weight with these eyed, can't you?
Yep. Especially when you're keeping it nice and close and nice and quick.
Johnny Arthur there having a bit of a torrid time today. He's been out in the middle, he's been down the edge, and now he's resorting to fishing right off the edge of his nets, Ray. That's a sign of desperation, not halfway through the match, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, mate. It's looking like it's really, really tough at the moment for John, doesn't it? We've been stood here while Jason next to him's caught a few better fish, and I've seen John catch a couple of, well, I think we call them plips or pairs of eyes, you know, really, really small fish on the deck. So John using all his experience and knowledge here just to try something different, to put something in the net. Anglers call it the keep net line, don't they? Very often that's a little bit deeper as well, Rob, because of the weight of the fish in the keep net that are caught in nets. Sometimes they end up making that area of that bottom of the lake a little bit deeper than the rest. So that's obviously normally where the keep nets are concentrated. It's quite interesting as well that, like, when it's normally a hot sunny day, when we've been covering UK Champs so far this year, we've seen a lot of people mugging on days like today. You can't see the fish to mug. There doesn't seem to be any of the bigger fish, what we'd associate with being big cruisers, running around, you know. Nobody stood up doing mugging. We haven't seen any big fish cruising around at the moment, so it's whether this is something to do with the aerators being on or not, I don't know.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
I'd like to talk to you about the Cresta Blackthorn range feeder rods. Specifically designed for commercial fisheries. They've got a parabolic action, very soft, forgiving. They go from 2.7 metres up to 3.5 metres. Very affordable as well. Perfect rod for all situations. Also, we've now got the Rolls Royce for 2018, the Identity. This is more of your traditional rod, which basically is a stiffer action. Again, designed for longer casts, bigger fish, slightly more expensive. The carbon we've used in this is absolutely top. The Identity comes with Fuji reel seats, 3 spare tips. The finish on them is perfect, ideal for braid or nylon. If you're into your feeder fishing, this is the rod for you.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
Just looking over there at Nick Speed now, and Nick Speed, one of the guys that is in the chasing pack, just 1 point behind Pembrighting. Remember, there's 4 guys in this area, and that's a big fish. That is a big fish. Nick Speed absolutely on fire, and just underneath our camera angle, we can't see him at the moment, but just in front of us here is Pete Bailey, one of the other guys that is in second place on 4 points. And Nick is having an absolute wonderful day, whereas Pete is not having the best of days at the moment. Now, they might be fairly close to each other, but they're actually in different sections.
Yeah, Nick's making full advantage of the corner peg there. He's got all the overhanging vegetation to his left and to his right. Pete's having to take a more orthodox shallow up in the water approach straight out of in front of him, around like about 9 metres, 10 metres or so.
Let's just have a little look now at what Nick is doing. He seems to be fishing shallow. He's spraying a few small pellets. They look like 4 mils.
Yeah, just keeping the bait going in.
Well, Nick Speed's back in again as we move from Pete Bailey. Oh, he's lost that one. That just pinged out there. Don't see that very often with Nick. He doesn't lose many fish at all.
No, very often, Rob, I don't think the guys are using balanced tackle, as we spoke before. The elastics are all quite soft because there's all sorts of fish in here. I think this probably just wasn't hooked properly. You're never going to land everything you hook. Very often in a match situation, anglers are looking to come down the edge in the latter stages. The rig for this is completely different than what we were using earlier to catch our fish shallow. A slightly heavier float we're using, a 4x16, purely and simply because the guys here at the fishery today have got the aerators on. What they're doing is they're pumping oxygen into the water. There's 2 aerators going on, and that's creating the lake to tow through. So when we're putting our rig through, it's not keeping still because of the current of the water is slightly moving it away. So we've gone for a heavier, slightly heavier float today. A couple of little things to point out on this rig. I've actually tied a tiny little piece of line, just what we call a double shoe knot, I guess, around the eye of the floats. This just gives me that little bit, they're very strong floats anyway, but that just gives me a little bit of security when I'm really bagging up and catching lots of big fish. The last thing I want in a match situation is for that eye to be coming out and me having to change the float or change the rig at all. Down we've got an 018 main line on here, which is a very strong main line. Down to again, our bulk of shot. This is purely and simply to get the bait down on the deck as quick as we can, because that's where I'm going to be targeting the fish. And another dropper just below that down there. And double hook length. Loop to loop method. Going down to the hook, we've got a size 16 power carp hook. As we're using a bigger bait in corn, we're targeting the bigger fish, so we're going to go for the bigger hook.
Pete's had a bit of a change of tactics there, Ray, and when we left him he was fishing straight out in front of him, but he's now just come down the edge and he's fishing to the other side of that little floating pontoon that Nick is fishing to. So they're not exactly the same area, there's a bit of distance between the two of them, but they're fishing a similar sort of spot.
Yeah, I think he's just, what Pete is trying to do now is copy a bit of what Nick's doing, to be fair, and who can blame him, you know? Nothing has happened for Pete straight out in front of him, so what he's doing now is he's catapulting pellets shallow down his edge and try to catch the fish as they come out of the reeds and out of the cover.
There's a very big difference between the spot that Pete's fishing to and the bit that Nick is fishing to, in that Pete is fishing more or less to the edge of a point, the corner of a point where it sticks out a little bit, where Nick is into a little bay. And that little bay, although it's very hard to see, has got just a little bit of shade on it.
Yeah, it's got a bit more cover than where Pete is, and corner pegs, you know, very often when you draw a corner peg in a match situation, it can be the be-all or the end-all. You know, you can either do very well, or if there's no fish in there, it can be a disaster. But there's certainly a few fish in it today, as Nick's proving.
No messing with Mr. Speed there, he's back in yet again. And this just seems to be fish after fish at the moment for Speedy in the corner over there. Let's have a look at that. It's another decent fish. It looks like, is that a tench or is that a carp?
Nice carp.
Another £3 on the score. And he mentioned a minute ago that he thinks he's looking down the barrel of about £80, which, bearing in mind, we've only had about 2 hours of the match so far. That is an absolutely fantastic weight, by far and away the best weight that we've heard so far. We've not been to the clay pit and we've not been to Belvedere yet, but that is a very, very decent weight from what we've seen. Hot conditions like today.
It is. You can just look around the lake as well, Rob. While we stood here, you know, everybody else is really struggling. Nick's absolutely flying.
Looks like Bailey's got his peg cooking a little bit now and he's starting to pick up. And he's going to be concerned seeing Nick catching so many fish, but actually Nick is going to be quite concerned seeing Pete catch fish, not because they're in the same section, because they're in opposite sections, but actually the section that Pete is in is very, very quiet indeed. So if Nick wins his section, that's all well and good, but if Pete wins his section, even if Nick beats him, he's going to be up there on points with him as well. It's a proper battle developing now between these two. So this is the clay pit, and as you can see, it's very, very different from the other lakes that are on the Western Pools complex. Primarily that is because it's not on the Western Pools complex. This lake here is an awful lot older than the rest of them. It's called a clay pit because, funnily enough, it's where they used to dig clay out of for the local houses, and it's very, very deep. Very different style here, Ray, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you said earlier it's like 20 or 30 foot deep. What are you going to do in that depth of water? You're going to fish shallow, aren't you? You know, it's not like guys are going to be able to plumb up rigs that deep. So it's interesting to see that there's a few of the bigger carp swim around in this lake, and a few of the guys have been mugging, which is a tactic that we thought we might see on the main complex, but we didn't. The fish weren't really showing around on the other complex, but they do seem to be in here today. It's the bigger size fish, but as opposed to guys swinging a long pole and a long line out, they're actually doing it on wagglers. So they're chucking that waggler out, just trying to mug the fish as they swim past, really. I think it's going to be a story of that, and possibly bigger fish down the deep margins later on at the closing stages of the match.
Absolutely. Well, wherever you look, there are lots of cruisers on the surface, and I think the weights in here could be big if those fish decide to feed. Now, at the moment, they don't seem to be. It seems to be pretty even. There's a lot of the smaller fish coming out. One or two big fish were caught towards the early part of the match, but we're just coming up towards halfway now, and it is quite different here. You know, this place, if it switches on towards the back end of the match, particularly as we fish an hour later than most people, this is where it will really ramp up a little bit later on, and if those fish do come in a little bit closer and the pellet wag comes in, we can see some massive weights on here, but at the moment it seems fairly steady.
Yeah, I think so. The other advantage the guys have gotten here is you can see what everybody's doing. Again, as we discussed earlier, if you see someone else doing something better or catching more than you, it's your job as a match angler to work out what they're doing that you aren't. A lot of the time when we walk around, people say, how's the other lakes fishing? Who's doing well around the corner? What's the bloke behind me catching? You can pretty much see what everybody's doing on this lake, so it's really for you to work it out. If you're going wrong, change tactics, alter things, do what they're doing.
Well, we've got Pembrighton just down here below us. We're on a high bank overlooking the lake. We can see a lot of these fish cruising and where they are, and there's a big ball of fish directly in front of him, probably 20 yards out, so a little bit further than this pole line. What we're going to do now is just sneak down there and have a look and see exactly what he is doing. He's catching a lot of these.
Yes, Pem's just saying he's got no end of fish, but they're not very big at all.
I wonder if he knows that there's a few carp directly out in front of him as well. There's some quite big fish. We can just about see a dark patch. I'm not sure the camera's going to be able to pick that up. He's reaching out to about halfway to them. But you know, a lot of the time when you're low in the water or low close to the water, you can't see these fish just out there, can you? Look at that, that's very, very quick. He's obviously got a big ball of small fish out there in front of him. And it's a proper fish race, this, but you know what, this is what he's very, very good at. And if it's going to be these fish that decide the weights here, which I would be surprised to be honest, but if it's going to be these fish that will decide the weight here, he'll win this like a shot, because nobody's quicker at this than he is. Looks like Andy North has got a better fish there now, and this will be worth a reasonable amount in comparison with the smaller fish that have been caught. That's not too bad. He's had a couple of swipes at it so far with a landing net. I'm not convinced that's not foul hooks.
I think it's backwards, isn't it? Yeah, it's not the biggest fish in the world. It just goes to show what a soft elastic he's using.
Absolutely, and also when it's hooked in the tail, it was always going to be a bit more difficult. But you know, that's worth 10 or so of those ones that Pemb was catching. So, you know, if he catches a couple of them, that's a good run rate. Steve Rodder is a bit penned in over here. He's got a man on either side of him.
and he's got one option just to go straight out as opposed to down the edge, but it's been a bit quiet. Seems to be keeping pace with everyone else at the moment on the lake. Same tactics again though, fishing shallow.
Yes, seems to be what most of the guys are doing. They're starting to be scratching the hedge round this side a little bit, Rob. I think the reason that the guys aren't trying to mug them is they just can't see them. They just can't see them. The colour of the water, when you get down to the level of the bank, it's really difficult to see these fish.
Well, from the far side looking back, Ray, you can see just how much room Pembrithing has got. He's more or less on his own on the end of that jetty. Now, it has been pegged fully. It's just there is one spare peg. Somebody is going to be lucky to have that spare peg next door to them, and would you believe it, it's Pembrithing, so he's going to be thanking his lucky stars for that. There should be somebody in between him and the guy to his left as we look at it, so just underneath where the vans are there should be somebody plonked down there, but there isn't, and that gives him a massive amount of water.
Yeah, Pem's got a lot of room there, haven't he? But that's fishing, you know, you always need a little bit of luck. A lot of the other anglers here don't have anywhere near the room that Pem's got, but you've still got to say, Pem's catching fish. Pem's doing the right thing, he's putting weight in the net. So it doesn't matter, you know, you need to be more than just lucky, you still need to be good enough to take advantage of anything that goes your way in a match.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships.
Cresta nets, 4 in the range, 2 types, rubber and your traditional. Firstly, your rubber net, very small mesh, specifically designed so that no hair rigs or bands or hooks will hook up on it. And also another good feature of this net is when you're finished with it, a simple shake a couple of times and it's dry. Then more of your traditional net. Now this one has got larger eyes, a nylon net. All the nets have got really strong spreader blocks. They're all screwed together, which makes them really strong. These nets are the best on the market.
Cresta Gamakatsu, sponsors of the UK Angling Championships. Well, this is Belvedere, and this is one of the first pools on the complex to be built. It's not particularly wide, it's pretty long, and it's absolutely stuffed with fish, and we've got some big hitters on here. We've got Darren Cox, who is catching really, really well. Just behind us here, we've got Dave Swain. Guess what? He's catching really, really well. A little bit further down on the opposite bank, we have got former Match This winner, Zach Brown. He is catching very, very well. And Matt Parkin is also flying, isn't he?
Yeah, the guys seem to be catching more fish here now, the later stages of the match. They're catching very, very close. Darren's fishing long down his edge. Dave's actually catching pretty much between his nets. We've just seen him catch a really big barbel of about 4 or 5 pounds. He's loose feeding casters, fishing a big juicy bit of worm on the deck, so what barbel can turn that down?
We're getting up to sprint time now, aren't we? And this is the period of the day where the sun just starts to lose its strength a little bit. The brightness isn't quite as harsh. And this is where the fish really do start feeding. And in the UK Champs, generally what we do is fish an hour longer than normal. So for our matches, no, this is 5 hours, and actually we're starting at 1, fishing till 6. A lot of competitions finish at 5. And that last hour is always good, but when the last hour is after the match is normally finished, this makes it even better. And I'm just looking around the lake now because they are flying all over the place. There are fish coming out all over, and I think this lake is going to be really, really hard to call.
Yeah, the sun's come down a little bit now, hasn't it? It's nice and cooler. We can feel it's cooler as we're walking around. The carp are coming into the edge, and the guys are going to be fishing at a time soon where the fish aren't normally used to being caught. As we said, the matches are normally finishing around 5 o'clock. The UK Champs, as we know, we're going on till 6. That extra hour is normally the best, but effectively you've got an additional hour on top of that hour when the fish are used to being caught. So we could still see 50, 60, 70 pounds put in anglers' nets without question.
Absolutely, and you know, Swain is a prime example of this. In a very short period of time, we've seen him catch a couple of really big fish, and it's interesting seeing this balanced against the clay pit, and it'll be interesting to see when we go back to the clay pit later to find out what the weights are like, whether or not they have had that charge towards the end. One of the places I'm really interested in seeing is Weir, and I think we should head back up there and find out exactly what's gone on.
So we're coming into the final stages of the competition now, and I've got to say it's very, very, very difficult to call who is going to win the overall match. Early thoughts were that it was going to be this man behind us, Craig Goldstraw, but the wheels have come off a little bit, and we hear now that Grant Albert, a little bit further down this side of the bank, he's doing really, really well. However, we've seen Belvedere's been producing quite a few fish as well. Clay pit, not so many, but Belvedere seems to be the place to be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think guys have caught close to the margins pretty much all day there, haven't they? We've just been over there. There seems a lot more activity. A lot of the anglers seem to be catching more fish on that lake, so I should imagine possibly that's where we're going to see the highest weights of the day come from today. But as we know, it's more about sections than it is the biggest weight of the day, and which way it's going to go at the moment is anyone's game really at the moment.
Well, let's have a look at the tournament. Rather than deciding who's going to win the match and who's going to win the individual sections, let's have a look at the tournament leaders, and let's start off with the main man. What's he doing? He's over on the clay pit.
He looked like he was up there in his section, didn't he? I mean, he was working he had a lot of room, but he was working really, really hard to put a weight of those tiny fish together. I mean, he had quite a lot when we were there. Not a huge weight, but still more weight than anybody else. Working really hard for that section, Pem.
Absolutely.
So I think he's looking at leading that section by what we've seen.
Pem's looking good there. Let's have a look at Steve Rothery. He was also on the clay pit as well. He's one of the guys that's on 3 points in second place. He didn't seem to be doing so well. However, that section looked really tight because no one was doing really well.
I mean, he was saying to us, wasn't he? He felt he had around 40 or 50 pounds maybe. So
that was as good as anyone
really
else.
Tight. Yeah. So he might be up there.
So Steve Rothery could be anywhere. We don't know. Let's now have a look at Nick Speed. Almost certainly winning his section. He was absolutely flying early, catching a fish almost every single time he put in. He had a bit of a run of bad luck in the trees, up the woodwork. However, he was catching well. So he seemed a while ago to be in the lead.
As did Pete Bailey, who despite being next to him was in another section, but both those guys are right at the top at the moment. By what we saw earlier, I'm guessing they're probably still at the top of their sections.
They're going to be there or thereabouts, aren't they?
Yep.
Well, you know, that's it now from us. We can't analyse anymore. There's about 30 minutes of this competition left. There's going to be a bit of a fish race, but the weather looks like it's going to be exactly the same as it's been all the way through. It's hot, it's bright, there's a bit of a breeze, and you know what? It's pretty tough. Well, we're having a fantastic late charge in the last half an hour here from Craig Goldstraw, and would you believe it, he's fishing underneath his keep nets and he seems to have turned this right around. I'm just going to sneak in behind you, Craig, and see exactly what you're doing. You're right under your nets there.
Yep.
It's hope you don't mind me peering over your shoulder. I've come in very quietly, but it's not something that we see happening very often, this, is it?
No, no. It was a bit of inside information, to be honest, by Jamie again. He fishes here quite a bit, and he says try between your nets, and I've probably had 8 or 9 barbel down there.
Have you? Isn't it incredible that they will get back in that quick?
How
far, well, what sort of size have you been picking up?
I've had one probably 7 or 8 pound. Yeah. But I think the reason they're there, Rob, is they live under here.
Right.
You know, and they're just coming through your nets and yeah.
So looking through, when you kicked off, you started off just down the right-hand side on the margins down there, just off the rushes. You've then gone out a little bit further out.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. That was no time at all, was it? And that's a decent fish again.
Yeah.
Is it mainly barbel you're picking up down there?
Yeah, it's mainly barbel. Yeah, I've had a couple of carp, an F1, but mainly barbel. Like I say, I think they're literally living under here and just coming out.
Oh, let me get out your way, mate.
But you've got to use proper gear. 017 bottoms. Another barbel.
There it is, another barbel. And it is as simple as that. And who'd have thought it? You know, barbel, we don't see that many barbel.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think why this line works is throughout the course of the match, guys are putting amounts of bait.
Oh, there it is. That's the end. Yeah, they're putting the bait down there, and the fish come in and feed.
Sort of like dropping it by accident, and it just creating a new line for the end of the match.
But Craig has had a fantastic last part of this match, and it may well be that he's turned it round in this section completely.
Yeah, he might have. He started off very well, didn't he, this morning? And I think a lot of the guys have had quite a spell in the middle, but he's shown his class at the end of the match here by putting a good run of fish together.
So that's it, it's all over, and all eyes were on this man, Pembrighting, over on the clay pit, and what a day he'd had, would you believe it? Tough conditions, but yet another section win. That was incredible, but there were 2 interesting weights still to come with Nick Speed and Pete Bailey.
Penultimate weigh now for Nick Speed. He already has 93 pounds and 13 ounces on the scales. He's got 30 odd pounds there. 93.13 already. 35.3. That makes it 129 pounds so far. And then we have a silver net, and we're knocking on the door of £8 to £10 with that, I should think. £8 maybe even less. £129 dead so far. £10 1 ounce. That makes it a £139 and 1 ounce. Nick Speed takes the lead. Okay, £70 12 ounces for Pete Bailey. The final weigh now to go on, and we have in the lead £102 14 ounces, so he needs £32 3 ounces. It's gone round, it's past it. It's going to be £36, nearly 35.5. That's a section win for Pete Bailey. Section win for Pete Bailey. That is impressive news, because that means that he is on 4 points. That puts him in a very, very commanding position going into round 4. Pete, well done. That must be such a relief.
It's a huge relief. Very small margins, but yeah, fantastic. Helped by a little bit of room, but yeah, fantastic news.
Well,
Really
we
pleased.
saw you early on in the day, and you were fishing out in front of you, and you were struggling a little bit. It went dead over there, didn't it? And then back in again when you came in down the side. That really, really helped out.
Yeah, and they didn't want to be up in the water. Or, well, if they did, I certainly couldn't stay in touch with them. So I've ended up going down the edges earlier than I wanted to, pinging pellets, and found a few fish. So
A few donkeys down there as well.
I've had a few big fish, which have really helped the cause. So I'm really pleased. Really pleased.
£3. £3 was a win.
£3 of win.
That's just one fish, isn't it? That shows how tight this margin is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I should imagine it'll be the same on a few of the other lakes. This sort of fishing, it's you can't make a mistake. You just can't get away with it, unfortunately.
So there it is, and what a fantastic day it was at Weston Pools. But all eyes now are on the championship table, and a perfect score for Pembreyton puts him well and truly at the top on 3 points. Can he continue that amazing run? If he does, he can't be touched. Nick Speed, Pete Bailey, they are snapping at his heels, and just look at that weight difference. If it comes to a tie break between them, they have the advantage over Writing. Further down the field, well, there's a whole host of top flight anglers snapping at the leaders' heels, and remember, this tournament is usually won with between 7 and 9 points, so it's still all to play for.
So that's it, round 3 is over, and that man Pembreyton, well, he is still at the top of the pile with a perfect score. Is he going to be hard to beat? Well, he's going to need his wits about him at Boston for round 4, because he has been chased by 2 men that have been chasing him all the way through, Pete Bailey and Nick Speed. Boston has a habit of biting back. Will it? We won't know until next time. See you there.